What's going on, guys? We're here in Ultima Online, Outlands. Sorry, we're kind of tardy, as usual, I guess, but I had to push the stream off for an hour tonight because my boys were insistent that I read The Hobbit tonight as they were going to sleep, and I promised that I would, so I'm definitely glad that they enjoyed that book. But as far as we go, we're going to be checking out the Book of Enoch tonight, and we'll discuss that briefly. The reason I want to check that out is because, well, I was looking at it the other day, actually, and the way it starts kind of caught my eye. The way that it calls on, it claims to be written toward the elect of God in a distant generation that's alive during a time when God steps down from his throne and wipes evil off the earth. And the reason that caught my eye, number one, is because of the elect language. That's what, like, immediately kind of, you know, perked my ear as possibly credible, because, you know, that's biblical language talking about God's elect. And now when he's talking about the remote generation, though, I'm wondering what the context of that is, because if it's like original Enoch, like literally third son from Adam, Enoch, or whatever he was, any generation could be a remote generation to him, to his perspective. But if it's something written later, something I've seen recently kind of acted like it was more likely that it was written sooner than that, like 100 to 300 years before Christ. But I'll have to look more into that. If you guys know more about, like, the research behind the writing of it, let me know. But we're going to be checking it out, and we're just going to be using discernment as we kind of listen to it and hear what he has to say. Because as we know, Wes Huff, you might have seen, did a great video on the Bible, referencing the Book of Enoch and quoting it even. And so we're going to listen to the Book of Watchers tonight. And we're just going to listen to it, and if we hear anything bogus, that's what we're just going to do. The same thing like we do with Leighton Flowers, for example. Like, we're just going to listen to it. If we hear anything crazy, we're going to be like, hang on a second, Enoch, that's dumb, you know, whatever, or whatever. Because, you know, we can tell if someone is legitimately speaking from the Spirit or not. Let me fade this music out here because we're about done with that. I'm going to go ahead and start playing the Book of Enoch, at least the first book, Watchers. If you guys enjoy this, maybe we will do like the other books too, because apparently there's a Book of Parables as well. I'm not sure about that though. Now, I don't know what it is about this dungeon, but there's a lot of gold left behind. People are just leaving gold behind, and that's mostly what we're going to be doing tonight, gathering gold and staying hidden while we listen to the Book of Enoch and kind of review it. Now, without further ado, I'll go ahead and get it started here. Hopefully we don't get some kind of copyright thing going.
Book of Enoch, narrated by Alexander Scourby.
Book 1, The Watchers. Chapter 1, The Words of the Blessing of Enoch. The words of the blessing of Enoch, wherewith he blessed the elect and righteous who will be living in the days of tribulation, when all the wicked and godless are to be removed. And Enoch...
So, the days of tribulation. where all the wicked and godless are to be removed. So here's one thing. We can't assume that he's talking about the great tribulation that Jesus was referring to, because there's many different times of tribulation, but because the tribulation that Jesus was referring to, it was never claimed that all evil would be wiped off the earth at that time, right? We have a whole eschatology given to us, finally revealed through the prophet John, right? We've got a lot given to us by Jesus, but Jesus gives the rest to the prophet John, the apostle John, whatever you want to call him. And we know when, biblically, there's supposed to be a time when all evil is wiped off the earth, and that's in Revelation 21, after Satan has been bound for 1,000 years. The Christ and the saints who were beheaded for his name's sake have reigned for 1,000 years, and Satan's released. And then, after an undisclosed number of years, I guess, because we don't know how long Satan's little season is. That's never actually said in the Bible. Then all evil, all wicked will be wiped off the planet. And so that's what gave me pause. And that was the reason I wanted to even listen to the rest of what he had to say, because I'm like, is he talking about the end of Satan's little season, like directly before the great white throne judgment? Couldn't he be actually talking about our time right now? And so that's what made me want to listen to it. So we'll continue from there and let him talk for a while.
A righteous man whose eyes were opened by God took up his parable and said, I saw the vision of the Holy One in the heavens, which the angel showed me, and from them I heard everything, and from them I understood as I saw, but not for this generation, but for a remote one, which is for to come. Concerning the elect I said, and took up my parable concerning them. The Holy Great One will come forth from his dwelling, and the eternal God will tread upon the earth, even on Mount Sinai, and will appear in the strength of his might from the heaven of heavens. And all shall be smitten with fear, and the watchers shall quake, and great fear and trembling shall seize them unto the ends of the earth. And the high mountains shall be shaken, and the high hills shall be made low, and shall melt like wax before the flame. And the earth shall be wholly rent in sunder, and all that is upon the earth shall perish, and there shall be a judgment upon all. But with the righteous he will make peace, and will protect the elect, and mercy shall be upon them. And they shall all belong to God, and they shall be prospered, and they shall all be blessed, and he will help them all, and light shall appear unto them, and he will make peace with them. And behold, he cometh with 10,000s of his holy ones to execute judgment upon all, and to destroy all the ungodly, and to convict all flesh of all the works of their ungodliness which they have ungodly committed, and of all the hard things which ungodly sinners have spoken against him. Chapter 2. The Creation. Observe ye everything that takes place in the heaven, how they do not change their orbits, and the luminaries which are in the heaven, how they all rise and set in order each in its season, and transgress not against their appointed order. Behold ye the earth, and give heed to the things which take place upon it from first to last, how steadfast they are, how none of the things upon earth change, but all the works of God appear to you. Behold the summer and the winter, how the whole earth is filled with water, and clouds and dew and rain lie upon it. Observe and see how in the winter all the trees seem as though they had withered and shed all their leaves, except 14 trees, which do not lose their foliage, but retain the old foliage from 2 to 3 years, till the new comes. And again, observe ye the days of summer, how the sun is above the earth over against it. And you...
I think we would have to kind of go slow through that part to understand the parable that he's talking about here. Maybe he's literally just talking about winter and nature here. And the summer.
You seek shade and shelter by reason of the heat of the sun. And the earth also burns with growing heat, and so you cannot tread on the earth or on a rock by reason of its heat. Observe ye how the trees cover themselves with green leaves and bear fruit. Wherefore give ye heed, and know with regard to all his works, and recognize how he that liveth forever hath made them so. And all his works go on thus from year to year forever, and all the tasks which they accomplish for him, and their tasks change not, but according as God hath ordained so is it done. And behold, how the sea and the rivers in like manner accomplish and
According to as God has ordained, so is it done. Is that what it said? And behold, how the sea and the rivers in like manner accomplish and change not their task from his commandments, but ye have not been steadfast. Did it already go? Did it already switch? I guess I'm ahead. I guess it might have gone too fast. Maybe. Well, what really makes me like this so far, sorry that was so disconnected, but what really makes me like this so far and why I pause like that is because Enoch's talking about God's decree, God's sovereignty here. You know what I'm saying? And so it was this kind of language that made me interested in the book to begin with, because it appeals to the spirit in me to speak of God in such a way, and to speak of time as being under his decree, you know? So we'll continue here.
change not their tasks from his commandments. But ye have not been steadfast, nor done the commandments of the Lord, but ye have turned away and spoken proud and hard words with your impure mouths against his greatness. O ye hard-hearted, ye shall find no peace. Therefore shall ye execrate
That sounds like Paul. It does. That sounds like Paul right there.
your days, and the years of your life shall perish, and the years of your destruction shall be multiplied in eternal abomination, and ye shall find no mercy. In those days ye shall make your names an eternal abomination unto all the righteous, and by you shall all who curse, curse. All the sinners and godless shall imprecate by you, and for you, the godless, there shall be a curse. And all the righteous shall rejoice, and there shall be forgiveness of sins, and every mercy and peace and forbearance. There shall be salvation unto them, a goodly light. And for all of you sinners there shall be no salvation, but on you all shall abide the curse of the beast. But for the elect there shall be light and joy and peace, and they shall inherit the earth. And then there shall be bestowed upon the elect wisdom, and they shall all live and never again sin, either through ungodliness or through pride.
See?
But they who are wise...
This is why I can see why you would reference this in, if you were a biblical author, because listen to him. He sounds like a biblical author.
Wise shall be humble, and they shall not again transgress, nor shall they sin all the days of their life, nor shall they die of anger or wrath, but they shall complete the number of the days of their life. And their lives shall be increased in peace, and the years of their joy shall be multiplied in eternal gladness and peace all the days of their life. Chapter 3. Fallen Angels. And it came to pass, when the children of men had multiplied, that in those days were born unto them beautiful and comely daughters. And the angels, the children of the heaven, saw and lusted after them, and said to one another, Come, let us choose us wives from among the children of men, and beget us children. And
all right, so we've gone back. Either we've gone back in time, or we've gone into the future from the perspective of the writer, right? From Enoch's past, right? We've jumped in. Well, I guess it would be Enoch's, like, kind of present time, I guess, right? Because he was around in that Genesis early area. The Genesis 6 era, I think Enoch would probably... The original Enoch should have been alive back then. But I think that's what we're going to be hearing during this. We're going to be hearing about how the Watchers asked him to talk to God on their behalf. and ask for forgiveness since they didn't, realize what they were doing, or they were sorry, or whatever. I don't remember. But I won't spoil whatever, but here it comes.
Azazel, who was their leader, said unto them, I fear ye will not indeed agree to do this deed, and I alone shall have to pay the penalty of a great sin. And they all answered him and said, Let us all swear an oath, and all bind ourselves by mutual imprecations, not to abandon this plan, but to do this thing. Then sware they all together, and bound themselves by mutual imprecations upon it. And they were in all 200, who descended in the days of Jared on the summit of Mount Hermon, and they called it Mount Hermon, because they had sworn and bound themselves by mutual imprecations upon it. And these are the names of their leaders: Samlazaz, their leader, Arachelba, Ramil, Kokablil, Tamlil, Ramlil, Danil, Ezekiel, Barakijel, Asael, Armaros, Batarel, Ananel, Zachlil, Samsapil, Setarel, Turel, Jomjael, Sariel. These are their chiefs of tens. And all the others together with them took unto themselves wives, and each chose for himself one, and they began to go in unto them, and to defile themselves with them. And they taught them charms and enchantments.
So it sounds like he's getting a little more detailed into the Genesis 6 account, where Genesis 6, kind of flies right through that. Sounds like he's getting a little more detailed on that.
And the cutting of roots, and made them acquainted with plants. And they became pregnant, and they bare great giants, whose height was 3,000 ells, who consumed all the acquisitions of men. And when men could no longer sustain them, the giants turned against them and devoured mankind. And they began to sin against birds and beasts, and reptiles and fish, and to devour one another's flesh, and drink the blood. Then the earth laid accusation against the lawless ones, and Azazel taught.
So in this account, in this detail, Enoch is saying here, or whoever wrote this is saying here, that they didn't only sin with human women, they started sinning against animals too. And so, I guess that would create some kind of weird hybrid thing going on there. What a crazy time. Me and my uncle used to play this game, actually, back when it came out, and pretend that it was like our character. We would pretend that they were like role-playing as someone who lived during pre-flood times. We used to pretend that the game was just like pre-flood times. Yeah, we're nerds. It's all good.
Taught men to make swords and knives and shields and breastplates, and made known to them the metals of the earth, and the art of working them, and bracelets and ornaments, and the use of antimony, and the beautifying of the eyelids, and all kinds of costly stones, and all coloring tinctures. And there arose much godlessness, and they committed fornication, and they were led astray, and became corrupt in all their ways. Semjaza taught enchantments and root cuttings, Armaros the resolving of enchantments, Barakijal taught astrology, Kokabel the constellations, Ezekiel the knowledge of the clouds, Arachiel the signs of the earth, Shamsiel the signs of the sun, and Sariel the course of the moon. And as men perished, they cried, and their cry went up to heaven. Chapter 4. Intercession of Angels. And then Michael, Uriel, Raphael, and Gabriel looked down from heaven, and saw much blood being shed upon the earth, and all lawlessness being wrought upon the earth. And they said one to another, The earth made without inhabitant cries the voice of their cryings up to the gates of heaven. And now to you, the holy ones of heaven, the souls of men make their suit, saying, Bring our cause before the Most High. And they said to the Lord of the ages, Lord of lords, God of gods, King of kings, and God of the ages, the throne of thy glory standeth unto all the generations of the ages, and thy name holy and glorious and blessed unto all the ages. Thou hast made all things, and power over all things hast thou, and all things are naked and open in thy sight. And thou seest all things, and nothing can hide itself from thee. Thou seest what Azazel hath done, who hath taught all unrighteousness on earth.
So I wonder if Enoch is going to reference the Messiah in any way, like the Christ form of the Messiah in any way, instead of just referring to the Lord. from the throne, and or if Enoch's full understanding is just God on the throne without kind of, some of our nuances that we have from the New Testament. Just curious about that. What kind of, if he has, or he could have some kind of idea like Isaiah, because Isaiah saw presumably Christ on the throne. And as a matter of fact, isn't that what they say in the Gospels? That's who Isaiah saw, was Christ. And so when the Bible talks about that, I don't know. I know I've said this before, but I think that Isaiah saw post-ascension, like glorified body Christ, like post-crucifixion, post-resurrection, post-ascension, having received back to himself the eternal nature of God's glory, like, the timelessness aspect of it and all of that. When he says in John 17:5, return to me the glory which I had with you before the world was, I think that God's full eternal glory is included in that. And so that's why I think that it was that Isaiah saw post-ascension Christ on the throne. And I wonder if that's the same image that Enoch has in his mind when he's referring to God on the throne. But I don't know. We'll wait and see if there's like some kind of specific description.
Earth and reveal.
Right now we're talking about the intercession. The fallen angels were doing all kinds of crazy stuff. And now we've got Michael and Gabriel, I think, and some other angels who are supposed to be interceding in that right now. So that's cool.
Revealed the eternal secrets which were in heaven, which men were striving to learn. And Samlazaz, to whom thou hast given authority to bear rule over his associates. And they have gone to the daughters of men upon the earth, and have slept with the women, and have defiled themselves, and revealed to them all kinds of sins. And the women have borne giants, and the whole earth has thereby been filled with blood and unrighteousness. And now, behold, the souls of those who have died are crying out, making their suit to the gates of heaven, and their lamentations have ascended, and cannot cease, because of the lawless deeds which are wrought on the earth. And thou knowest all things before they come to pass, and thou seest these things, and thou dost suffer them, and thou dost not say to us what we are to do to them in regard to these. Then said the Most High, the Holy and Great One spake, and sent Uriel to the son of Lamech, and said to him, Go to Noah, and tell him in my name, hide thyself, and reveal to him the end that is approaching, that the whole earth will be destroyed, and a deluge is about to come upon the whole earth, and will destroy all that is on it. And now...
now, so he's referring to how Noah came by the information. That's interesting. It's adding a detail there of how that information was delivered to Noah.
Now instruct him that he may escape, and his seed may be preserved for all the generations of the world. And again the Lord said to Raphael, Bind Azazel hand and foot, and cast him into the darkness, and make an opening in the desert, which is in Dudael, and cast him therein. And place upon him rough and jagged rocks, and cover him with darkness, and let him abide there forever, and cover his face, that he may not see light. And on the day of the great judgment he shall be cast into the fire. And heal the earth, which the angels have corrupted.
See, that's consistent. That's consistent with Revelation. You would have to be like, if this isn't legitimate, it would have to be written after Revelation. Somebody was just like, okay, I'm going to take this really biblical stuff, and I'm a biblical scholar, and I'm just going to write this and like trick people into thinking that this is a genuine document just based on my own advanced knowledge of the scripture. You know what I mean? Honestly, because what he just said is just right straight out of the book of Revelation. That's gospel. I mean, that's Apostle John eschatology right there about Satan being cast into the lake of fire.
And proclaim the healing of the earth, that they may heal the plague, and that all the children of men may not perish through all the secret things that the watchers have disclosed and have taught their sons. And the whole earth has been corrupted through the works that were taught by Azazel. To him ascribe all sin. And to Gabriel said the Lord, proceed against the bastards and the reprobates, and against the children of fornication, and destroy the children of the watchers from amongst men. Send them one against the other, that they may destroy each other in battle. For length of days shall they not have. And no request that they make of thee shall be granted unto their fathers on their behalf, for they hope to live an eternal life, and that each one of them will live 500 years. And the Lord said unto Michael, Go, bind Samlazars and his associates, who have united themselves with women, so as to have defiled themselves with them in all their uncleanness. And when their sons have slain one another, and they have seen the destruction of their beloved ones, bind them fast for 70 generations in the valleys of the earth, till the day of their judgment and of their consummation, till the judgment that is forever and ever is consummated. In those days they shall be led off to the abyss of fire, and to the torment and the prison in which they shall be confined forever. And whosoever shall be condemned and destroyed will from thenceforth be bound together with them to the end of all generations. And destroy all the spirits of the reprobate and the children of the watchers, because they have wronged mankind. Destroy all wrong from the face of the earth, and let every evil work come to an end, and let the plant of righteousness and truth appear, and it shall prove a blessing. The works of righteousness and truth shall be planted in truth and joy.
So, are we to interpret that as saying that when, at the time that they're cast into the lake of fire, the children of the watchers will still be among men at that time with the reprobate? There was some congressman or whatever, I don't remember exactly who it was, some official person said mysteriously to read the Book of Enoch, and then you'll know what's really going on. And that was another thing that piqued my interest, actually. And so I wonder with this UFO disclosure stuff, all this non-human intelligence disclosure stuff, if this isn't it, if it's not their version, their the thing presented by our culture, which has been built up over the last few decades, the whole alien thing from outer space. Though we've got interdimensional ideas now thrown into it with the advent of quantum physics, which wouldn't have been possible to include into the conversation back then. But let's continue here.
Joy forevermore. And then shall all the righteous escape, and shall live till they beget thousands of children. And all the days of their youth and their old age shall they complete in peace. And then shall the whole earth be tilled in righteousness, and shall all be planted with trees, and be full of blessing. And all desirable trees shall be planted on it, and they shall plant vines on it. And the vine which they plant thereon shall yield wine in abundance. And as for all the seed which is sown thereon, each measure shall bear 1,000. And each measure of olives shall yield 10 presses of oil. And cleanse thou the earth from all oppression, and from all unrighteousness, and from all sin, and from all godlessness, and all the uncleanness that is wrought upon the earth, destroy from off the earth. And all the children of men shall become righteous, and all nations shall offer adoration, and shall praise me, and all shall worship me. And the earth shall be cleansed from all defilement, and from all sin, and from all punishment, and from all torment. and I will never again send upon it from generation to generation and forever. And in those days I will open the store chambers of blessing which are in the heaven, so as to send them down upon the earth over the work and labor of the children of men. And truth and peace shall be associated together throughout all the days of the world, and throughout all the generations of men. Before these things Enoch was hidden, and no one of the children of men knew where he was hidden, and where he abode, and what had become of him. And his activities had to do with the watchers, and his days were with the holy ones. And I, Enoch, was blessing the Lord of majesty and the King of the ages, and lo, the watchers called me.
Are we saying... Now, is this like when they're saying Enoch was hidden? Are we talking about after Enoch was taken? He continued his activities, but was just hidden? Is that what we're saying? Not entirely sure. Or if we're just talking about he was hidden among men, he was hidden on the earth while he was here prior to his being taken away. Not sure. Because, I don't know. I guess we'll find out. Because I don't remember if he's taken at the end of this or whatever.
Enoch the scribe, and said to me, Enoch, thou scribe of righteousness, go. Declare to the watchers of the heaven who have left the high heaven, the holy eternal place, and have defiled themselves with women, and have done as the children of earth do, and have taken unto themselves wives. Say to them, Ye have wrought great destruction on the earth, and ye shall have no peace nor forgiveness of sin. And inasmuch as they delight themselves in their children, the murder of their beloved ones shall they see, and over the destruction of their children shall they lament, and shall make supplication unto eternity, but mercy and peace shall ye not attain. And Enoch went and said, Azazel, thou shalt have no peace. A severe sentence has gone forth against thee to put thee in bonds. And thou shalt not have toleration, nor request granted to thee because of the unrighteousness which thou hast taught, and because of all the works of godlessness and unrighteousness and sin which thou hast shown to men. Then I went and spoke to them all together, and they were all afraid, and fear and trembling seized them. And they besought me to draw up a petition for them that they might find forgiveness, and to read their petition in the presence of the Lord of heaven. For from thenceforward they could not speak with him, nor lift up their eyes to heaven for shame of their sins, for which they had been condemned. Then I wrote out their petition, and the prayer in regard to their spirits and their deeds individually, and in regard to their requests that they should have forgiveness and length. And I went off and sat down at the waters of Dan, in the land of Dan, to the south of the west of Hermon. I read their petition till I fell asleep. And behold, a dream came to me, and visions fell down upon me, and I saw visions of chastisement, and a voice came bidding me to tell it to the sons of heaven, and reprimand them. And when I awaked, I came unto them, and they were all sitting gathered together, weeping in Abel's jail, which is between Lebanon and Senezer, with their faces covered. And I recounted before them all the visions which I had seen in sleep, and I began to speak the words of righteousness, and to reprimand the heavenly watchers. Chapter 5. The Words of Righteousness. The book of the words of righteousness, and of the reprimand of the eternal watchers, in accordance with the command of the Holy Great One, in that vision I saw in my sleep. What I will now say, with a tongue of flesh, and with the breath of my mouth, which the Great One has given to men to converse therewith, and understand with the heart. As he has created and given to man the power of understanding the word of wisdom, so hath he created me also, and given me the power of reprimanding the watchers, the children of heaven. I wrote out your petition, and in my vision it appeared thus, that your petition will not be granted unto you throughout all the days of eternity, and that judgment has been finally passed upon you. Your petition will not be granted unto you, and from henceforth you shall not ascend into heaven unto all eternity. And in bonds of the earth the decree has gone forth to bind you for all the days of the world. And previously you shall have seen the destruction of your beloved sons, and ye shall have no pleasure in them, but they shall fall before you by the sword. And your petition on their behalf shall not be granted, nor yet on your own, even though you weep and pray and speak all the words contained in the writing which I have written. And the vision was shown to me thus. Behold, in the vision clouds invited me, and a mist summoned me, and the course of the stars and the lightnings sped and hastened me, and the winds in the vision caused me to fly and lifted me upward, and bore me into heaven. And I went in, till I drew nigh to a wall which is built of crystals, and surrounded by tongues of fire.
Whoa! All right. So, there you go. There he goes. I guess we're going with him here. With his little being taken away to heaven adventure. That's very interesting. And wow, what a sad tale about being petitioning for forgiveness and then getting denied. There's a murderer over there. We got to get out of here. We got 20K on us right now. But yeah, that is a sad story, even though it's, fallen angels. I guess, they're kind of jerks and all that. But still, we're jerks too. So there's a little bit of understanding on my behalf, I guess. Because, we get God's mercy. And they just don't. So there's that. God will have mercy on whoever he will. And that's just how it goes. We know that from Romans 9. And, nobody can say to him, what have you done? So, though I'm sure that caused a fair amount of anger. I'm not sure if it goes into that or not, but I'm interested to see his description of heaven here. That was that escalated very quickly.
And it began to affright me. And I went into the tongues of fire, and drew nigh to a large house which was built of crystals, and the walls of the house were like a tessellated floor made of crystals, and its groundwork was of crystal. Its ceiling was like the path of the stars and the lightnings, and between them were fiery cherubim, and their heaven was water. A flaming fire surrounded the walls, and its portals blazed with fire. And I entered into that house, and it was hot as fire and cold as ice. There were no delights of life therein. Fear covered me, and trembling got hold upon me. And as I quaked and trembled, I fell upon my face, and I beheld a vision, and lo, there was a second house, greater than the former, and the entire portal stood open before me, and it was built of flames of fire. And in every respect it so excelled in splendor and magnificence and extent, that I cannot describe to you its splendor and its extent. And its floor was of fire, and above it were lightnings and the path of the stars, and its ceiling also was flaming fire. And I looked, and saw therein a lofty throne. Its appearance was as crystal, and the wheels thereof as the shining sun, and there was the vision of cherubim. And from underneath the throne came streams of flaming fire, so that I could not look thereon. And the great glory sat thereon, and his raiment shone more brightly than the sun, and was whiter than any snow. None of the angels could enter, and could behold his face by reason of the magnificence and glory, and no flesh could behold him. The flaming fire was round about him, and a great fire stood before him, and none around could draw nigh him. 10,000 times 10,000 were before him, yet he needed no counselor. And the most holy ones who were nigh to him did not leave by night nor depart from him. And until then I had been prostrate on my face, trembling, and the Lord called me with his own mouth, and said to me, Come hither, Enoch, and hear my word. And one of the holy ones came to me and waked me, and he made me rise up and approach the door, and I bowed my face downwards. And he answered and said to me, and I heard his voice, Fear not, Enoch, thou righteous man and scribe of righteousness. Approach hither and hear my voice. And go, say to the watchers of heaven, who have sent thee to intercede for them. You should intercede for men, and not men for you. Wherefore have ye left the high, holy, and eternal heaven, and lain with women, and defiled yourselves with the daughters of men, and taken to yourselves wives, and done like the children of earth, and begotten giants as your sons? And though ye were holy, spiritual, living the eternal life, you have defiled yourselves with the blood of women, and have begotten with the blood of flesh, and as the children of men have lusted after flesh and blood, as those also do who die and perish. Therefore have I given them wives also, that they might impregnate them, and beget children by them, that thus nothing might be wanting to them on earth. But you were formerly spiritual, living the eternal life, and immortal for all generations of the world. And therefore I have not appointed wives for you, for as for the spiritual ones of the heaven, in heaven is their dwelling. And now the giants, who are produced from the spirits and flesh, shall be called evil spirits upon the earth, and on the earth shall be their dwelling. Evil spirits have proceeded from their bodies, because they are born from men, and from the watchers is their beginning and primal origin. They shall be evil spirits on earth, and evil spirits shall they be called. And the spirits of the giants afflict, oppress, destroy, attack, do battle, and work.
Wow, it's really interesting. I don't know if Heisler, whatever his name is, Meisler, whatever that guy's, I can't remember his name. Sorry, but the dude who did the like stuff on the Watchers, and anyway, he did like a roundabout biblical explanation for why demons were the disembodied spirits of the children of the Watchers. And that's just, Enoch just said that. I just find that interesting. What was that guy's name? Who knows what that guy's name was? He's not alive anymore. But he did one of the best modern takes on, the spiritual realm. I haven't listened to him for a long time, so I don't know if he got into the Book of Enoch or not, but I remember him giving this roundabout explanation about how he saw one tribe. He saw the name of a tribe of Nephilim who were listed as going back and forth between hell and earth or something like that. And then he just noticed that they were the name of the tribe. I don't know. I can't remember exactly. We might have to look into that one day, but let's continue. Listen to this.
Work destruction on the earth and cause trouble. They take no food, but nevertheless hunger and thirst, and cause offenses. And these spirits shall rise up against the children of men and against the women, because they have proceeded from them. From the days of the slaughter and destruction and death of the giants, from the souls of whose flesh the spirits, having gone forth, shall destroy without incurring judgment. Thus shall they destroy until the day of the consummation, the great judgment, in which the age shall be consummated, over the watchers and the godless, yea, shall be wholly consummated. And now as to the watchers who have sent thee to intercede for them, who had been aforetime in heaven, say to them, You have been in heaven, but all the mysteries had not yet been revealed to you, and you knew worthless ones. And these in the hardness of your hearts you have made known to the women, and through these mysteries women and men work much evil on earth. Say to them, therefore, You have no peace. Chapter 6. Taken by Angels. Angels took and brought me to a place in which those who were there were like flaming fire, and when they wished, they appeared as men. And they brought me to the place of darkness, and to a mountain, the point of whose summit reached to heaven. And I saw the places of the luminaries, and the treasuries of the stars, and of the thunder, and in the uttermost depths, where were a fiery bow and arrows and their quiver, and a fiery sword and all the lightnings. And they took me to the living waters, and to the fire of the west, which receives every setting of the sun. And I came to a river of fire, in which the fire flows like water, and discharges itself into the great sea towards the west. I saw the great rivers, and came to the great river, and to the great darkness, and went to the place where no flesh walks. I saw the mountains of the darkness of winter, and the place whence all the waters of the deep flow. I saw the mouths of all the rivers of the earth, and the mouth of the deep. I saw the treasuries of all the winds. I saw how he had furnished with them the whole creation, and the firm foundations of the earth. And I saw the cornerstone of the earth. I saw the four winds which bear the firmament of the heaven. And I saw how the winds stretch out the vaults of heaven, and have their station between heaven and earth. These are the pillars of the heaven. I saw the winds of heaven, which turn and bring the circumference of the sun and all the stars to their setting. I saw the winds on the earth carrying the clouds. I saw the paths of the angels. I saw at the end of the earth the firmament of the heaven above, and I proceeded and saw a place which burns day and night, where there are 7 mountains of magnificent stones, 3 towards the east and 3 towards the south. And as for those towards the east, was of colored stone, and one of pearl, and one of jacinth, and those towards the south of red stone. But the middle one reached to heaven like the throne of God, of alabaster, and the summit of the throne was of sapphire. And I saw a flaming fire. And beyond these mountains is a region the end of the great earth. There the heavens were completed, and I saw a deep abyss, with columns of heavenly fire. And among them I saw columns of fire fall, which were beyond measure alike towards the height and towards the depth. And beyond that abyss I saw a place which had no firmament of the heaven above, and no firmly founded earth beneath it. There was no water upon it, and no birds, but it was a waste and horrible place. I saw there 7 stars like great burning mountains, and to me when I inquired regarding them. The angel said, "This place is the end of heaven and earth. This has become a prison for the stars and the host of heaven. And the stars which roll over the fire are they which have transgressed the commandment of the Lord in the beginning of their rising, because they did not come forth at their appointed times. And he was wroth with them, and bound them till the time when their guilt should be consummated for 10,000 years. And Uriel said to me, Here shall stand the angels who have connected themselves with women, and their spirits, assuming many different forms, are defiling mankind, and shall lead them astray into sacrificing to demons as gods. Here shall they stand till the day of the great judgment, in which they shall be judged till they are made an end of. And the women also of the angels who went astray shall become sirens. And I, Enoch, alone saw the vision, the ends of all things, and no man shall see as I have seen." Chapter 7. The Holy Angels. And these are the names of the holy angels who watch mankind. Uriel, one of the holy angels, who is over the world and over Tartarus. Raphael, one of the holy angels, who is over the spirits of men. Raguel, one of the holy angels, who takes vengeance on the world of the luminaries. Michael, one of the holy angels, to wit, he that is set over the best part of mankind and over chaos. Sarachiel, one of the holy angels, who is set over the spirits who sin in the spirit. Gabriel, one of the holy angels, who is over paradise and the serpents and the cherubim. Ramiel, one of the holy angels, whom God set over those who rise. And I proceeded to where things were chaotic, and I saw there something horrible. I saw neither a heaven above nor a firmly founded earth, but a place chaotic and horrible. And there I saw 7 stars of the heaven bound together in it, like great mountains and burning with fire. Then I said, For what sin are they bound, and on what account have they been cast in hither? Then said Uriel, one of the holy angels, who was with me, and was chief over them, and said, Enoch, why dost thou ask, and why art thou eager for the truth? These are of the number of the stars of heaven, which have transgressed the commandment of the Lord, and are bound here till 10,000 years, the time entailed by their sins, are consummated. And from thence I went to another place, which was still more horrible than the former. And I saw a horrible thing, a great fire there, which burnt and blazed, and the place was cleft as far as the abyss, being full of great descending columns of fire. Neither its extent or magnitude could I see, nor could I conjecture. Then I said, How fearful is the place, and how terrible to look upon! Then Uriel answered me, one of the holy angels who was with me, and said unto me, Enoch, why hast thou such fear and affright? And I answered, Because of this fearful place, and because of the spectacle of the pain. And he said unto me, This place is the prison of the angels, and here they will be imprisoned forever. And thence I went to another place, the mountain of hard rock, and there was in it 4 hollow places, deep and wide and very smooth. How smooth are the hollow places, and deep and dark to look at. Then Raphael answered, one of the holy angels who was with me, and said unto me, These hollow places have been created for this very purpose, that the spirits of the souls of the dead should assemble therein, yea, that all the souls of the children of men should assemble here. And these places have been made to receive them till the day of their judgment, and till their appointed period, till the great judgment upon them. I saw a dead man making suit, and his voice went forth to heaven, and made suit. And I asked Raphael the angel who was with me, and I said unto him, This spirit which maketh suit, whose is it, whose voice goeth forth, and maketh suit to heaven? And he answered me, saying, This is the spirit which went forth from Abel, whom his brother Cain slew. And he makes his suit against him till his seed is destroyed from the face of the earth, and his seed is annihilated from amongst the seed of men. Then I asked regarding it, and regarding all the hollow places, Why is one separated from the other? And he answered me, and said unto me, These 3 have been made that the spirits of the dead might be separated. And such a division has been made for the spirits of the righteous, in which there is the bright spring of water. And such has been made for sinners, when they die and are buried in the earth, and judgment has not been executed on them in their lifetime. Here their spirits shall be set apart, in this great pain, till the great day of judgment and punishment and torment of those who curse forever, and retribution for their spirits. There he shall bind them forever. And such a division has been made for the spirits of those who make their suit, who make disclosures concerning their destruction, when they were slain in the days of the sinners. Such has been made for the spirits of men who were not righteous but sinners, who were complete in transgression, and of the transgressors they shall be companions, but their spirits shall not be slain in the day of judgment, nor shall they be raised from thence. Then I blessed the Lord of glory, and said, Blessed be my Lord, the Lord of righteousness, who ruleth forever. From thence I went to another place to the west of the ends of the earth, and I saw a burning fire which ran without resting, and paused not from its course day or night, but regularly. And I asked, saying, What is this which rests not? Then Raguel, one of the holy angels who was with me, answered me, and said unto me, This course of fire which thou hast seen is the fire in the west, which persecutes all the luminaries of heaven. And from thence I went to another place of the earth, and he showed me a mountain range of fire which burnt day and night. And I went beyond it, and saw 7 magnificent mountains, all differing each from the other. And the stones were magnificent and beautiful, magnificent as a whole, of glorious appearance and fair exterior. 3 towards the east, one founded on the other, and 3 towards the south, one upon the other, and deep rough ravines, no one of which joined with any other. And the 7th mountain was in the midst of these, and it excelled them in height, resembling the seat of a throne, and fragrant trees encircled the throne. And amongst them was a tree such as I had never yet smelt, neither was any amongst them, nor were others like it. It had a fragrance beyond all fragrance, and its leaves and blooms and wood wither not forever, and its fruit is beautiful, and its fruit resembles the dates of a palm. Then I said, How beautiful is this tree, and fragrant, and its leaves are fair, and its blooms very delightful in appearance. Then answered Michael, one of the holy and honored angels who was with me, and was their leader. And he said unto me, Enoch, why dost thou ask me regarding the fragrance of the tree, and why dost thou wish to learn the truth? Then I answered him, saying, I wish to know about everything, but especially about this tree. And he answered, saying, This high mountain which thou hast seen, whose summit is like the throne of God, is his throne, where the Holy Great One, the Lord of glory, the eternal King, will sit, when he shall come down to visit the earth with goodness. And as for this fragrant tree, no mortal is permitted to touch it, till the great judgment, when he shall take vengeance on all and bring to its consummation forever. It shall then be given to the righteous and holy. Its fruit shall be for food to the elect. It shall be transplanted to the holy place, to the temple of the Lord, the eternal King. Then shall they rejoice with joy and be glad, and into the holy place shall they enter. And its fragrance shall be in their bones, and they shall live a long life on earth, such as thy fathers lived. And in their days shall no sorrow or plague or torment or calamity touch them. Then blessed I, the God of glory, the eternal King, who hath prepared such things for the righteous, and hath created them, and promised to give to them. And I went from thence to the middle of the earth, and I saw a blessed place in which there were trees with branches abiding and blooming. And there I saw a holy mountain, and underneath the mountain to the east there was a stream, and it flowed towards the south. And I saw towards the east another mountain higher than this, and between them a deep and narrow ravine. In it also ran a stream underneath the mountain. And to the west thereof there was another mountain, lower than the former, and of small elevation, and a ravine deep and dry between them. And another deep and dry ravine was at the extremities of the three mountains. And all the ravines were deep and narrow, of hard rock, and trees were not planted upon them. And I marveled at the rocks, and I marveled at the ravine, yea, I marveled very much. Then said I, For what object is this blessed land which is entirely filled with trees, and this accursed valley between? Then Uriel, one of the holy angels who was with me, answered and said, This accursed valley is for those who are accursed forever. Here shall all the accursed be gathered together, who utter with their lips against the Lord unseemly words, and of his glory speak hard things. Here shall they be gathered together, and here shall be their place of judgment. In the last days there shall be upon them the spectacle of righteous judgment in the presence of the righteous forever. Here shall the merciful bless the Lord of glory, the eternal King. In the days of judgment over the former they shall bless him for the mercy in accordance with which he has assigned them. Then I blessed the Lord of glory, and set forth his glory, and lauded him gloriously. And thence I went towards the east, into the midst of the mountain range of the desert. And I saw a wilderness, and it was solitary, full of trees and plants. And water gushed forth from above. Rushing like a copious watercourse towards the northwest, it caused clouds and dew to ascend on every side. And thence I went to another place in the desert, and approached to the east of this mountain range. And there I saw aromatic trees, exhaling the fragrance of frankincense and myrrh, and the trees also were similar to the almond tree. And beyond these I went afar to the east, and I saw another place, a valley of water. And therein there was a tree, the color of fragrant trees, such as the mastic. And on the sides of those valleys I saw fragrant cinnamon. And beyond these I proceeded to the east, and I saw other mountains, and amongst them were groves of trees, and there flowed forth from them nectar, which is named Sarara and Galbanum. And beyond these mountains I saw another mountain to the east of the ends of the earth, whereon were aloe trees, and all the trees were full of stacta, being like almond trees. And when one burnt it, it smelt sweeter than any fragrant odor. And after these fragrant odors, as I looked towards the north over the mountains, I saw 7 mountains full of choice nard, and fragrant trees, and cinnamon, and pepper. And thence I went over the summits of all these mountains, far towards the east of the earth, and passed above the Erythraean sea, and went far from it, and passed over the angel Zotiel. And I came to the garden of righteousness, and from afar off I saw numerous trees, and these great 2 trees there, very great, beautiful, and glorious, and magnificent. And the tree of knowledge, whose holy fruit they eat, and know great wisdom. That tree is in height like the strangler fig, and its leaves are like the carob tree, and its fruit is like the clusters of the vine, very beautiful, and the fragrance of the tree penetrates afar. Then I said, How beautiful is the tree, and how attractive is its look. Then Raphael the holy angel, who was with me, answered me and said, This is the tree of wisdom, of which thy father old and thy aged mother, who were before thee, have eaten, and they learnt wisdom, and their eyes were opened. And they knew that they were naked, and they were driven out of the garden. And from thence I went to the ends of the earth, and saw there great beasts, and each differed from the other, and birds also differing in appearance and beauty and voice, the one differing from the other. And to the east of those beasts I saw the ends of the earth whereon the heaven rests, and the portals of the heaven open. And I saw how the stars of heaven come forth, and I counted the portals out of which they proceed, and wrote down all their outlets of each individual star by itself, according to their number and their names, their courses and their positions, and their times and their months, as Uriel the holy angel who was with me showed me. He showed all things to me, and wrote them down for me. Also their names he wrote for me, and their laws and their companies. And from thence I went towards the north to the ends of the earth, and there I saw a great and glorious device at the ends of the whole earth. And here I saw 3 portals of heaven open in the heaven. Through each of them proceed north winds. When they blow, there is cold, hail, frost, snow, dew, and rain. And out of one portal they blow for good. But when they blow through the other 2 portals, it is with violence and affliction on the earth, and they blow with violence. And from thence I went towards the west to the ends of the earth, and saw there 3 portals of the heaven open such as I had seen in the east, the same number of portals and the same number of outlets. And from thence I went to the south to the ends of the earth, and saw there 3 open portals of the heaven, and thence there come dew, rain, and wind. And from thence I went to the east, to the ends of the heaven, and saw here the 3 eastern portals of heaven open, and small portals above them. Through each of these small portals pass the stars of heaven, and run their course to the west on the path which is shown to them. And as often as I saw, I blessed always the Lord of glory. And I continued to bless the Lord of glory, who has wrought great and glorious wonders, to show the greatness of his work to the angels, and to spirits, and to men, that they might praise his work and all his creation, that they might see the work of his might, and praise the great work of his hands, and bless him forever. The end of the book 1, The Watchers.
Click and copy the link in the description box below to get the Scorby.
All right. Well, that was pretty cool. I definitely enjoyed that. What do you guys think out there about the Book of Enoch? I mean, I didn't see any kind of like theological issues with it at all. Can you tell me what's the red flag for why it's not scripture? I didn't actually notice any red flags. I was listening pretty intently. And I don't see the issue. We might see what Michael Heiser had to say about it. Let me do this. Alright, let's see if we can get this video that Sonny just shared in Discord. See what Michael Heiser had to say about it.
And the nature of the topic, and
oh yeah, the Watchers are always good for you know, I don't want to say entertainment, but you know, sort of to draw interest and to make what maybe seem like kind of a normal, dull sort of trip through the New Testament. You know, make it a little more interesting if we start thinking about them and the possibility that the New Testament writer was thinking about them, and that's really what we're going to do today. Now, this is going to be a lot different in terms of what I'm going to be asking you to think about, or the way I'm going to be asking you to think. But I find the possibility here really fascinating. Now, I've mentioned, again, this topic before in other episodes, sort of just in passing. This is really coming from something I blogged about 2 years ago. 2 years ago at the Society of Biblical Literature meeting, I went to hear a paper by a guy named Tyler Stewart, who at the time was a doctoral student at Marquette. I'm not sure if he's done or not, but he read this paper, and the paper title was Fallen Angels, Bastard Spirits, and the Birth of God's Son, an Enochic Etiology of Evil in Galatians 3:19 through Galatians 4:11. Again, etiology refers to the origin of something. So when I saw this in the program book, I thought, what in the world is this guy going to talk about? Because I had never even thought about the sin of the Watchers, because the term bastard spirits is a Second Temple Jewish term for the Watchers. They both in terms of, you know, not only the sin there in Genesis 6:1-4, but the results, again, producing, you know, Nephilim, who again would be killed, and then this is where the demons come from in Second Temple Jewish literature. That's why they're called bastard spirits. They're also called Watchers themselves. because the immaterial part of whatever that was, whatever the Nephilim or the giant clans were, the spirit side, the immaterial side, again, gets referred to in Enochian literature as watchers, bastard spirits, demons, and all this kind of stuff. So when I saw the title, I thought, what is this going to be about? What does this have to do with Galatians 3 and 4 and the coming of the Son of God and the fullness of time, and all this stuff was going through my head. So I went to the paper, and it was really, really fascinating. And so what I'm going to try to do here is summarize Stuart's thesis, his argument, and go into how it affects the way we read Galatians 3 and 4, at least in the passages that are the parameter, of his paper topic. And so, I'll just say up front, a lot of this is going to come, right out of Stuart's paper. So we want to give him credit because this is his work. And it's not something you're really going to find in any commentaries. I can tell you that right now. You will find it, though, in early church discussion, people like Irenaeus, for instance. You will find the idea that the sin of the watchers is sort of lurking behind things like human depravity and the origin of the expansion of sin, the proliferation of evil, the proliferation of wickedness throughout the world. And in the case of some Second Temple writers, they would even speak of what the watchers did.
Yeah, so it's interesting to think that with the depravity of man, it has to have something to be depraved with. You know what I mean? It has to have some specific way to act out the depravity is what I mean. So the idea that the watchers are involved with the proliferation of sin, is in like giving them ways to sin, you know what I mean? They may not have thought of. But
it is the origin of sin. You say, well, what about what happened in the garden? Apparently some Second Temple Jewish writers thought that, Adam could kind of get a pass because, he was kind of dumb. He got deceived, that sort of thing. Eve was deceived, and then Adam sort of just didn't know what was going on. I mean, they'll try to give him a pass, and then they'll put everything at the feet of the watchers. But I think in biblical theology, we're more consistent saying, here's when sin, rebellion, enters God's world in Genesis 3. And then we have this other thing happen in Genesis 6. And I've made the comment before that, and especially in Unseen Realm, that, again, if you asked a Jew why is the world the way it is? Why do we get depravity? Why, is humanity so messed up? If you asked a Jew that question, you'd get, here's where it started back in Genesis 3, or it started in Genesis 6. You're going to get one or the other there. And then they're going to talk about Genesis 6, about what the Watchers did to transmit forbidden knowledge to humans. And humans took that knowledge and basically perverted it and turned it against themselves. And, things like, lust and whatnot, all this is going to be laid at the feet of the Watchers, their entrance into the world and their interaction with people. And that's going to be the real guts of why the world is in the awful condition it is. It's going to be the Watchers. Then, of course, thirdly, you have what happens at Babel. So I've made the comment before that you're dealing with 3 episodes here, but in Christian theology, the Christian tradition, what people grow up hearing in church, they're only going to be oriented to one, and that is the Genesis 3 incident, the fall. Whereas if you asked a Jew the same question, that is not the answer you'd get. And the Old Testament, again, never references Genesis 3 as an explanation for the condition of the human heart or the condition of human wickedness. You don't get a passage that references it. The closest you get is in the New Testament with Paul in Romans 5. And again, I have a different view of Romans 5, and I'm right in there with a few church fathers like Irenaeus, who was very cognizant of the Watcher's story. We mentioned this on our earlier episode about the reception of the Book of Enoch in the early church. But you have certain church fathers that say, look, this whole thing with the Watchers was a big deal in early Judaism, and they're familiar with the material to such a degree that a number of early church thinkers, buy into what a Jew was thinking, like Paul, right here in the first century. And so the question really that we're going to tackle today is, well, when we talk about Paul, is Paul only thinking about the fall, or is Paul thinking about the sin of the watchers as well in some of the stuff he says about the law and about human transgressions or just transgressions in general, about what the coming of the Messiah was supposed to fix? Is it all just Adam? Is it all just the fall? Or is what is in Paul's head inclusive of the transgression, the sin of the watchers that we read about specifically in the Book of Enoch, but in Second Temple material, more broadly speaking? And what Stewart is arguing in the paper is, you know what? He thinks that Paul does have the sin of the watchers in mind when he's writing what he writes in Galatians 3 and 4, that he is not thinking about Adam in the garden and just sort of normal human transgression. And so that's what we're going to cover today. Now, it's going to take a little bit of doing to frame this whole idea, frame the whole, topic. So let's just start kind of in broad strokes here. When we're looking at Galatians 3 and 4, if you read through, start at the beginning of Galatians 3, it's a very important chapter. Paul does very obviously subordinate the Mosaic law to the gospel, to what happened on the cross, to Jesus. And he says things like, hey, the law was here, but it was sort of provisional. It wasn't going to be the solution, to the human dilemma. It was provisional in God's salvation history, God's plan. And, for Paul, that means if you have heard about the Messiah now and you turn back to the law, you return to, again, looking at the law as the thing that God wants you to respond to, or the thing that is somehow supposed to influence your eternal destiny. If you're doing that kind of stuff, even though the law was a good thing, because it came from the hand of God. Okay, if you're focused on the law and you're not focused on what happened on the cross, okay, you're not getting anywhere. You're not going to go to heaven. In fact, it puts you in danger of actually rejecting the Messiah and rejecting what happened on the cross if you put all this emphasis on the law. So again, these are ideas that are very familiar from Galatians, but it's this quote-unquote negative view of the law that I want us to think about as we begin our episode here. This idea that Paul, a Jew, again, Pharisee of the Pharisees, one of the elite, kind of Jews here, this idea that he could look at the law and say that the law was lesser than something else, to say that the law was less important or less effective, or just a sort of precursor to God's plan. The idea that you would sort of take the law off its pedestal and put it at a lower status, just that idea is important, that a Jew could do that. Because we tend to think, and again, the way we're taught about Judaism as Christians, and most of us are Gentile Christians, we tend to look at the whole Jewish situation and think, well, the law was just everything to these people. Okay, I kind of understand that, but we have to realize that the idea of subordinating the law, taking it down a peg or two, actually wasn't unique in Paul's day. Now, Paul's living in the first century. This is the heart, the last quarter or so of the Second Temple Jewish period. And the idea that the Mosaic law could be looked at by Jews as not the apex of God's revelation or the apex of God's plan, that actually wasn't new to Paul. And this is going to become an important trajectory. Now, Stewart, in his paper, writes things like this. He says, subordination of the Mosaic law is not entirely unknown in Second Temple Judaism. In a rather unique parallel, the subordination of the Mosaic law also appears in First Enoch. There are a number of striking parallels between First Enoch, particularly the Book of the Watchers, which is the first 36 chapters of what we call First Enoch, the Book of Jubilees, and Paul's argument in Galatians 3 and 4. And so, again, what Stewart is saying here is that there's something going on in First Enoch and Galatians that make it very clear that the writer doesn't view the Torah, doesn't view the law as the pinnacle of God's revelation. Again, there's more of an emphasis on other things, and specifically, if we can't do it in the space of an episode here, but if we were to read First Enoch, if we were to read Jubilees, and which has a lot of Enochian material in it, as we've commented in earlier episodes, and if we read Galatians, we would discern, if we read all three of them sort of back to back to back, that they're really much more cosmic in their outlook. In other words, they're concerned with with God's plan of redemption, not just for the Jew, not just for Israel, but for the whole world, for all of the nations. They're much more grand and cosmic in their outlook. And there's a lot said in these books about angels and the role of angels as, being, participants with or part of God's unfolding plan of redemption for the cosmos, for all nations, for everything, not just the Jewish nation. So if your focus isn't on just the Jewish nation, if it includes Gentiles by default, that alone is going to sort of make you look differently at the Torah, because the Torah, again, the Mosaic law, was given to the nation of Israel. It wasn't part of the Abrahamic covenant. Okay, the Abrahamic covenant is the one that included the nations. Through you all the nations of the world will be blessed, of the earth will be blessed. The law was given just specifically for the nation of Israel. And so that makes it it gives it kind of this tunnel vision effect, that it's part of something bigger, but the something bigger transcends the law. The law is just this little piece. It's this way station. It's this placeholder, that kind of thing. It puts the law again on a lower status compared to something else. And of course, it's the something else that, is going to be part of our discussion here. I mean, I'm writing this book on the importance of Enoch to the New Testament right now. And it becomes very clear that this notion that, hey, the things that are really theologically important are the most important, are the ones that include all peoples, all the nations, not just Israel. That is really an important theme in Enoch. And it actually, again, is a critical thought, a critical theme in the New Testament. And it's most pronounced in Paul, because even though Paul is this great Jew, this great Pharisee, and a tremendously learned man, again, in the Torah and all sorts of other things, his focus is just not on the Jews ethnically, on the Jews nationally. It's much bigger than that. And so scholars have noticed that, hey, Paul's thinking is a lot more expansive than you would expect, your sort of normal Palestinian Jew at this time to be. And they've noticed that, hey, there are other Jews that thought this way too, that sort of, again, put the law on this lower status, that it was just kind of a second cousin to what was, really coming, what was really big time, what was really important. And in the case of Enochian literature, this is why you'll get Enoch referred to as the major thinker, the major force, that the revelation given to Enoch. Remember, Enoch walked with God. In the Book of Enoch, this is a big deal, because Enoch alone is given secret divine knowledge that applies to all people and the cosmos. Enoch in the Book of Enoch gets this little tour of the cosmos. He's the only human to have this kind of knowledge. And that knowledge transcends what Moses gets. So in the Book of Enoch, it's very easy to see that Enoch is elevated above Moses in a number of ways. Enoch is actually called the Son of Man in the Book of Enoch, which is real interesting, because, again, that's a title that gets applied to Jesus by virtue of Daniel 7. But again, it's the fact that he is the lone human one to receive this kind of revelation, this kind of divine knowledge, and he becomes the conduit through which others gain this divine knowledge. Now, of course, Son of Man concept in the New Testament's a little different than that with Jesus, and we don't want to go down that rabbit trail, but I'm using it to illustrate the fact that to a number of Jews, again, what we would call Enochic Judaism, Enoch was the guy, because he had knowledge first. He got it before Moses. His knowledge was better. It was more cosmic than Moses, and his knowledge fixed something, or was intended to fix something, or apply to something that was bigger than the 12 tribes of Israel. Okay, this is why Enoch becomes the central focus in the mind of certain Jews. And so when when there are things that pop up in the New Testament that sound the same way as, again, the earlier Enochian material. Scholars have noticed this, and Stewart is one of them. And so he is going to bring this to Galatians 3 and 4 and ask, again, some really, really interesting questions about, what's going on here? How does this matter? That Paul, again, is he perhaps thinking in the Enochian way, as opposed to, and this is going to sound anachronistic, but I'm doing it deliberately, in opposed to the way that the Christian church thinks about these things. Put another way, is what is in Paul's head closer to Enochic Judaism than it is to Martin Luther or John Calvin or modern evangelicalism? Okay? Because we as Christians have been trained to think only one way about what Paul says in Galatians 3 and 4 and a host of other New Testament passages. So along comes again Stewart in this paper that says, well, okay, I'm part of the Christian tradition too, and I get that, but I can't help wondering if Paul wasn't really thinking like we think when it comes to Galatians 3 and 4. I wonder if he was thinking like Enochian Judaism, Enochian Jews thought. I wonder if he's thinking like along the lines of what the writer of the Book of Enoch thought, how they thought about things and the human condition. And so this is what he's going to do in the paper. Now, if we apply this to Galatians, again, just to get started here, again, Paul, with respect to Galatians, we have, again, him downplaying the law. And if you look at how he does this and why he does this, it kind of makes sense along the same lines. Well, in Galatians, he downplays the law because it's not chronologically prior. There was revelation from God that came before the law. Obviously the Abrahamic covenant, which is more universal than the law, came before the law. And again, that's going to matter to Paul, because when Paul starts talking about salvation, he doesn't say, oh, well, you're saved by, well, look at this verse in Leviticus over here, or look at, you're saved by doing the law, or, this kind of, he's going to deny that. And what is his paradigmatic touch point for salvation? It's Abraham. It's prior to the law. Abraham believed, again, and was justified before there was even a law to talk about. So, you look at what Paul says, again, in some of these things, like in Galatians 3. Let's just jump into Galatians 3 here real briefly, and then we'll do something a little more systematic. Paul says, know then, this is verse 7 actually, that it is those of faith who are the sons of Abraham. In other words, the real children of Abraham are not the ones who are born ethnically, genealogically from the loins of Abraham. They're not ethnic Jews necessarily. It's the ones who are of faith who are the seeds of Abraham. And the scriptures, verse 8, foreseeing that God would justify the Gentiles by faith, preached the gospel beforehand to Abraham, saying, in you shall all the nations be blessed. He quotes the Abrahamic covenant in Genesis 12. And then in verse 9, so then those who are of faith are blessed along with Abraham, the man of faith. So, Paul, again, assigning greater importance to revelation that isn't the law, is the point I want to sort of fix in your head. And the Abrahamic covenant had universal implications, whereas the law did not. Paul does some other things. He points out in Galatians 3:17 that the law came 430 years after, again, the revelation to the patriarchs. And when it did come, Paul says very pointedly here in Galatians 3, when it did come, it didn't invalidate what had gone before. So he says here, this is what I mean, the law, which came 430 years afterward, does not annul a covenant previously ratified by God, so as to make the promise void. Okay, for if the inheritance comes by the law, it no longer comes by promise, but God gave it to Abraham by a promise. So again, Paul's saying, look, yeah, the law is a wonderful thing. Later in Romans 7, he's going to talk about, he loves the law after his inward man and all that stuff. But here in Galatians, and Galatians is an earlier epistle than Romans, here in Galatians, he's saying, look, the law came, we all know this, but what really mattered, what was really, really significant, for our salvation was the promise made to Abraham through faith. And it was not just a promise to Abraham, it was a promise to all nations. Again, so it's chronologically prior, and it sort of supersedes, it transcends the law. So what Paul is kind of angling for here is that the law is not at the level of some of this other stuff. What appears to be more important is that you have a universal problem, okay, the whole condition that the world is in, the whole, what we would call depravity of humankind, that's the universal problem. So to fix that, you need a universal solution, okay? And that ain't the law. So now we come to Galatians 3:19, and this is really where Stuart's paper begins. Now, he asks a very logical question. And for us, it's a logical question because of the ground we've just covered in the last few minutes. Paul asks, well, why then the law? In other words, if the law doesn't fix this problem, this universal problem, what's the point? Why did God give it? So Galatians 3:19, why then the law? And the verse says, it was added because of transgressions, until the offspring should come to whom the promise had been made. And it was put in place through angels by an intermediary. Now, an intermediary implies more than one, but God is one. So we have this statement here that Paul raises the question, very logical, why the law? Doesn't help here, why the law? What's the point? Because the Abrahamic stuff, the more cosmic stuff, the more universal stuff had come before. What's the point of the law? Now, when we look here at this verse and we get his answer, the law was added, quote, I have the ESV here, was added because of transgressions. It's common to interpret Paul's statement here that the function of the law was to either cause or produce or provoke transgressions. The issue is this preposition, karen, okay, which in the ESV is translated because of. So let's think about it. Lots of translations take karen and translate it because of. So the law was added because of transgressions. So, how do Christians, sort of reflexively think about this? Was the law added to make it clear to people who were doing stuff which things offended God? In other words, was the law added to sort of produce a sense of sin, a sense of transgression? Again, you could see how people could reason that way. The law was added because of transgressions. Well, because without it, you wouldn't know what a transgression was. Okay, is that what Paul is thinking about here? Well, if it is, then he's thinking of human transgressions. But then you run into a problem. Well, what about people who never even read or heard the law? How would they know what a transgression was then? And it doesn't help to appeal to Romans 2 and say, well, they were sort of observing the law or not because of the inward man, their inner sense, their conscience, or natural law and all this kind of stuff. Well, that's great, but it still doesn't inform them. So if the purpose of the law was to inform people of which things God regarded as sin and which things he doesn't, even though they're sort of intuitively doing right things or intuitively or rebelling or however you want to look at Romans 2 there, nevertheless, they're still not informed. So it's not really a great answer as to why, how to understand this phrase, because of transgressions. Another option is that a lot of Christian theologians will say, well, because of transgressions, that's a reference to Adam and Eve. Okay? That's why the law was added, because Adam and Eve sinned and now we all sin. Well, okay. I mean, you could certainly say that, and you can argue this trajectory that, again, because of what happens in the garden, human beings are now all sinners. And again, this isn't saying that they're all guilty, like the way people usually understand Romans 5:12, and of course I don't, but without rabbit trailing into that topic, necessarily, let's just say that because of what happens in Eden, everyone sins. All right, everybody can agree on that point. Is that what Paul's talking about here? Well, how would that work too? Because you could see that okay, Adam and Eve, you got two sins there. Maybe that's why the plural is there. But we're only told about those individual sins, and frankly, we have to sort of add Eve's in there, because when Paul actually does specifically talk about Adam, which is not here in Galatians, Paul doesn't talk about Adam's sin here in Galatians. When he talks about it later in Romans, it might be 15, 20 years later in his epistles. Then he's only focused on Adam. Adam is the one that sort of brings the house down, the house of cards here. he doesn't really factor in Eve at that point. So is this the best way to understand it? Well, I don't know. You can make a reasonable argument for that, or at least it sounds like a reasonable argument. Well, Stewart in his paper again points out these little inconsistencies and these little sort of what ifs. Well, if Paul was talking about Adam, why didn't he just say Adam? And he says Adam somewhere else. And why isn't he clear if this is how he wants us to read it? But what Stewart's actually going to angle for comes next. He says, look, it's possible to read Galatians 3:19 not as describing the law giving people a sense of transgression, but rather the prior condition that prompted God to give the law. In other words, God gave the law not so that people would know what was a sin and what wasn't, and not because, I need to give the law now because of what Adam and Eve did. Rather, Stewart is saying it's possible to look at this as meaning that God gave the law to sort of restrain transgression, to sort of stem the tide of wickedness. That God gave the law here, at least among his people, because this is his portion. We're back to Deuteronomy 32:8 and 9. Of all the nations in the world, that there were in the world after the flood, God disinherited the nations at Babel. He starts over again. Again, he reissues the Edenic command, again, to Abraham's descendants. He makes a covenant with Abraham. He picks one people to start over again. They're referred to in Deuteronomy 32:8 and 9, that while the other nations are under the sons of God, Israel is Yahweh's portion. Jacob is his allotted heritage. And so for my people, I want to restrain the evil that is on the earth and within the human population, and naturally, because my people are human, within them. And I'm going to give the law to restrain wickedness, to sort of be an impediment, to help, because it's not going to cure anything, but to help. And in the meantime, their struggle with this law is going to reveal to them, again, a greater need of grace and salvation, and again, someone who will eventually come to undo the effects of not just the curse of Genesis 3, but really reverse all of this bad stuff, all of this wickedness. And again, in the theology of the Hebrew Bible, that's Genesis 3, it's Genesis 6, and it's, of course, Genesis 11, that this nation is going to be the conduit through which, it's going to be the means by which, that all of this stuff is reversed. Because I'm going to produce my Messiah, through them, and he's going to be an incarnation of my presence, of my essence. He's going to be me in human form, in incarnate human form. So, God's thinking, look, I need to help them. I need to restrain evil. And if they are holy, if they're a peculiar people, if their conduct, can be restricted in terms of sin, and also I give them rules for how to approach me in sacred space and have a relationship. And also, if sin is restrained, they'll just enjoy life more, and they'll be this peculiar, holy people. Again, our whole series in Leviticus, is what I'm hoping is going through your head now. If we can do that, that will actually attract people back, from the other nations. It'll attract attention, attract them back, so that they can come back into a right relationship with me. Now, before the Messiah, that means they have to join the community. They have to reject all other gods, and they have to align themselves in faith to the true God, the God of gods. And we've talked about all these things before in the podcast. So what Stewart is wondering, he's not listening to the podcast, he's just wondering this alone, but it works really nicely with the ground we've covered thus far, is that maybe we should think of the law as this means of kind of, at least stopping the proliferation of evil a little bit. Again, a hedge against the proliferation of evil. So he talks about this in the paper, and then he asks a crucial question. When we read Galatians 3:19, why the law? It was added because of transgressions. Stewart asks, well, have we ever really stopped to think just whose transgressions we're talking about? Now, on the one hand, there's a human element that's fairly obvious to see. Again, it's assumed almost without even thinking that the transgressions are Adam's and then the humans that follow him. And that's not surprising, given the fact that most Christians, what they're taught about how evil came into the world and what they're taught about depravity, why every human is just thoroughly corrupt and wicked. In view of the way most Christians are taught about these things, they would say, okay, well, sure, it has to be the fall, it has to be us, and that's it. That's where we draw the line. The transgressions that Paul's talking about are only, here's the key idea, are only ours and only going back to Adam. But, again, let's ask the question, what if Paul is working from a different mindset? What if Paul is factoring in and even oriented by what happens in Genesis 6:1 through 4? What if Paul has in mind what 95 or maybe better percent, I'll put it at 99. What if Paul is actually thinking in accord with 99% of Second Temple Judaism?
I think that Paul would spend less time laying out a very specific charge against humanity, and that he would spend just, even one sentence bringing in those sins of the fallen angels into his theology in the book of Romans or elsewhere. Really, nowhere does Paul ever really discuss things like that. So I don't know why. I don't know why he's stuck on that. It sounds honestly like a way to try to sneakily get past how serious of a charge Paul is laying down on humanity specifically for their own inward depravity. Now, having said that, I certainly by no means do I think it's impossible to think that fallen angels assisted humanity in learning all the different ways that they could sin, but Paul's not talking about that ever.
That the reason wickedness so permeates the earth is not just an extension and is in large part not even linked to what happened with Adam and Eve. But the reason that people are always and universally thoroughly wicked is because of what the Watchers did. Everybody in Paul's circle, everybody in Second Temple Judaism, with the exception of 3 passages, three intertestamental references in intertestamental literature, everything says that the reason for the proliferation of evil is the sin of the Watchers. Everything. The lone exceptions, I'm going to give you a few of them. I'll give you all of them because there really aren't, you can count them on one hand. We have 4th Ezra, book called 4th Ezra, and this is chapter 3, 20 to 22. Again, this is a pseudepigraphical book. It's part of the Second Temple corpus. It's, the writer says, "You did not take away from them their evil heart, so that your law might bring forth fruit in them. For the first Adam, burdened with an evil heart, transgressed and was overcome. And so also were all who were descended from him. Thus the disease became permanent. The law was in the people's heart along with the evil root. But what was good departed, and the evil remained." Now you'll notice the passage does not say that everybody became guilty because of Adam. Okay, it says that because of what Adam did, everybody, again, turns out to be evil. Again, it's just part of the human condition now. Everyone sins now. Okay, so there's that. There's another one in 4th Ezra. 4th Ezra, this is going to be chapter 7, and right around verse 116. The other reference was 4th Ezra 3, 20 to 22. Now,
I mean, no matter how that's phrased, we still have condemnation. We still have sin, death, and a judgment resulting in condemnation entering into all men through one man's offense. We still have that phrasing in Romans 5. And also, to speak on the point he was talking about earlier about the law, about trying to distinguish which way Paul was talking about, I don't know why, again, he doesn't just go to Romans 5 to clear it up, because Paul he talks about the same exact thing in Romans 5. He says But he clears it up. He's much more specific in Romans 5 when he says that the law came so that sin would abound. Or so that sin would increase, I mean. Anyway, he clears that up in Romans 5.
We're in 4th Ezra 7, 1:16 and following. This is my first and last word. It would have been better if the earth had not produced Adam, or else when it had produced him had restrained him from sinning. For what good is it to all that they live in sorrow now and expect punishment after death? O Adam, what have you done? For though it was you who sinned, the fall was not yours alone, but ours also, who are your descendants. For what good is it to us if an eternal age has been promised to us, and we have done deeds that bring death? What good is it that an everlasting hope has been promised us, but we have miserably failed? So on and so forth, yada, yada, yada. Again, basically saying that the reason that the earth is under judgment is because of everybody, not just Adam. Again, it's not just that everybody became guilty because of what Adam did, but everybody participates. Everybody, there's plenty of blame to go around here. It's not just Adam. What Adam did, again, results in humanity's corruption, and people will sin and bring forth judgment. So they're just as much a part of this as Adam is. 2nd Baruch 54. This is 13 through 22. Again, just to give you a little flavor of this. Those who do not love your law are justly perishing, and the torment of judgment will fall upon those who have not subjected themselves to your power. For although Adam sinned first and has brought death, and there's my reading of Romans 5:12 again, brought death upon all who were not in his own time, yet each of them who has been born from him has prepared for himself the coming torment.
Yeah, so there's a common misconception that many people have, it seems. You don't get a reading of anything, like my reading of Romans 5. That's just a way of saying that I don't like the clear, verbatim, objective teaching of Romans 5 because it doesn't fit with my free will theology, and so I have my own reading of it. That's just a way of saying that. Like, I just make up like my own stuff when it comes to that. Make up my own way of fitting it into my theology. So that's one thing I really don't like about Heiser, and why I don't really listen to him that much. Because I know that stuff like that's taking place all the time, and that he doesn't really have a great understanding of God's grace.
They're going to deserve it too because they sin too. And further, each of them has chosen for himself the coming glory, for truly the one who believes will receive reward. But now turn yourselves to destruction, you unrighteous ones who are living now, for you will be visited suddenly, since you have once rejected the understanding of the Most High. For his works have not taught you, nor has the artful work of his creation, which has existed always, persuaded you. Adam is therefore not the cause, except only for himself, but each of us has become our own Adam. Again, this is very much in concert with my view of Romans 5:12, and again, we're not going to rabbit trail into that, but what I want you to get here is we have a whole slew of references. The last one is the life of Adam and Eve. It's actually sections 12 through 17. It's the same thing, so I'm not going to bother to read through that, except that's actually the pseudepigraphical book where you get this passage about the serpent, the divine being who manifests as the serpent, actually became corrupt before he gets Adam and Eve to sin, when his revenge is plotted, because he rebels initially, according to this book, The Life of Adam and Eve, when Michael, the archangel, after humans are created, looks to the rest of the heavenly host, the rest of the members of the divine council, and says, you need to bow down and worship humanity now, the thing that God has made. And Lucifer, the one who turns out to be the Satan figure, says, forget that. I'm not doing that. In other words, he rebels in his heart and won't do it. That's the book that actually goes into the details like that. But what I want you to get here is that you have 4 passages in the entirety of Second Temple Jewish literature that link the reason for the great wickedness throughout the earth, link it to Adam. Everything else, and it is mountains of material, There are whole books, whole dissertations written on this that collect all the information, all the passages. Everything else says, nope, the reason why humanity is in the pickle it's in, the reason why the earth is so wicked and corrupt is because of what the Watchers did. They corrupted humans. And so what Stewart is asking in the papers, is it possible that Paul is not just thinking of Genesis 3, he's not just thinking of Adam, he's also thinking about the Watchers. Now, let's just think about this, and again, a lot of this is drawn from what Stewart writes. The key text, again, if this is the case, would be Genesis 6, 1 through 4. And if you think about the whole story, again, the way that Enoch expands on the sons of God, the daughters of men, and they produce Nephilim, it's very clear this is a transgression, again, in the Old Testament because of the way the New Testament uses it and refers back to it. But Enoch expands on this quite a bit. If you think about, if you know a little bit about what Enoch says about all of this, I think this will help. So I'm going to try to summarize it again using Stewart to do so. He says here that the Watchers' transgressions in Enoch are set in sharp contrast to God's created design for the cosmos. In the opening theophany of the book of 1st Enoch, God's created order is described as a place in which the, quote, luminaries of heaven will rise and set, each one ordered in its appointed time, and they appear on their feasts, and they do not transgress their own appointed order. That's 1st Enoch 2:1. In the Enoch narrative, though, the Enoch story, the Watchers are referred to as the stars of heaven that transgressed the command of the Lord. In other words, and here's the New Testament language, they left their first estate. Okay, they left the task, they left the thing they were appointed to do, and they came to earth. They cohabit with human women, and they corrupt the population en masse. That's what the book of 1st Enoch describes. That's the sin of the Watchers. This decision to leave their appointed place, their appointed order, and again, Peter and Jude pick up on this language. They come down and thoroughly corrupt the human race. So Stewart, continuing, going back to him, he says, the Watchers are held responsible for introducing wickedness to humanity in 1st Enoch 8:1. They thereby fundamentally alter the cosmos. They fundamentally uproot and ruin and destroy and put in upheaval God's created order. Back to Stewart. Similarly, in Jubilees, angels are portrayed as part of the fabric of the cosmos, created on the first day. It's Jubilees 2:2. These angels associated with the ordering of the natural world are responsible for bringing transgression into the world. Now again, this is me talking now. The point is that the Enochian material seems to consider Adam and Eve as sort of what happens to them is kind of a lesser crime because they were deceived. It's not as bad as humanity's willful deployment of the forbidden knowledge handed to them by the Watchers. In Second Temple literature, that seems to be far worse. It has a far worse effect, and it's worthy of more condemnation, again, to most Jewish writers. Back to Stewart. We should not be surprised then to see this explanation. Again, you can blame the Watchers for all of this. We should not be surprised then to see this explanation of the origin of evil in Paul as well. Why? Because Paul's a product of the Second Temple period. Stewart writes, indeed, a number of interpreters as far back as Tertullian have suggested that the Watchers' narrative is behind Paul's command in passages like 1 Corinthians 11:10 for women to cover their heads in worship, quote, because of the angels, unquote. This is Stewart now, I contend that it makes sense to read Paul's reference to transgressions in Galatians 3:19 in reference to the Watchers. And so this becomes the thesis of his paper. So how do we read Galatians 3 and 4 in light of all this? Again, just to summarize, what Stewart is suggesting, what he's arguing for is that, look, when Paul says, hey, why was the law added? And then he answers his own question by saying, the law was added because of transgressions, and it was mediated through angels. And in fact, one specific angel, we're going to get into that, this whole angelic mediation thing that I've written about in Unseen Realm. But Stewart's saying, when Paul writes this, is it possible he's thinking about the sin of the Watchers and not just Adam and Eve? Is that possible? And his argument is that, look, if we just sort of assume that, let's just assume it for the sake of a thought experiment. How would we read Galatians?
Let's just assume that he's thinking about the Watchers, even though he didn't say anything about the Watchers. I don't know why we would do that, because I think that Paul is very clear. Paul isn't like leaving anything to be guessed at here. Paul is doing his best to lay down a systematic theology, and we've already discussed what Romans 5 says verbatim. And so I hear him really trying to use this unseen realm thing to, like, I don't know, lessen the burden of sin that humanity bears, you know what I mean? And put it on the Watchers and various other entities that corrupted mankind, through their... Oh man, I'm about to die. It's okay, I made it to town. Man, why can't I... Man, there's too many people around right now.
Galatians 3 and 4 differently. Okay, so let's jump into that. So here's how you would read it differently. Just again, making a broad point here.
Yeah, so this
What
is
you
how
would have.
this is how you come to a place where you have your own reading. You just like make believe that he's talking about the Watchers, and then you read it as if he is, and then you say you have your own reading. Cool. I mean, anybody can do that. Anybody can do that, and just imagine anything. Yeah, I wonder if Paul's talking about dinosaurs. I wonder if he's thinking about dinosaurs somewhere deep down. Now, I mean, obviously it's not as arbitrary as dinosaurs. He's saying that Second Temple Judaism had these ideas, and that's why it makes sense that Paul would be thinking about that. But while Paul may have thought about that on occasion, I don't know why that lessens his exact words in Romans 5 about the fall and how it took place, what it concluded in, what the consequences of it was. Anyway, we got no Watcher activity in that. Sin and death and a judgment resulting in condemnation entered into all men through one man's offense. Both of all four of those things are stated. Anyway, I don't know why he's just like, I don't know why he's going there. But yeah, bunch of crazy stuff, man. The UFO files was a big bust. Something, something is on the way with disclosure and all that, but I don't think it's real. I think it's all bogus. I think it's like they've got something else planned, and that deceiving us in this way is part of the plan. But I don't know, guys. I think that's about all I have to say about the Book of Enoch. I guess we could keep going in the next episode. Yeah, he sure did do that. I think that's clear in the scripture. Gen Z Calvinists about God appointing the rulers in the spiritual realm. You had like principalities of these nations or whatever that are like always at war with each other. Remember, Michael was like the prince of Israel, and he was delayed by Prince of Persia, who had fallen. It was like bad. So yeah, he doesn't downplay the seriousness of original sin. He's just wondering if Paul is also thinking about that, about the Watchers depraving mankind. And now, hey, I don't think that they didn't deprave mankind, and I don't think Paul wouldn't be thinking about that. But I don't think Paul is thinking about that in Romans 5 when he's writing that. I think he's intentionally laying out a systematic theology there that's building on itself. He might have thought about it, but the Watchers, fallen angels, demonic spirits, Nephilim, all of those guys, they assisted humanity in figuring out different things. Gave them, different sorceries and, different kind of, like, you got to have a deity. You got to have you have to have a being to sacrifice things to, for it to get started. You know what I mean? The idea has to be presented to you by someone, right? Humans aren't just going to come up with that idea out of nowhere. That had to have been given to them by their pagan spirit princes. He does. I mean, he downplays the seriousness of original sin in the sense that he believes in free will, and that he believes that the gospel is. He believes in the free will oriented gospel. He really does. So he does downplay it in that sense. The seriousness of original sin, as in, depraving our wills as well, like, to the fullest extent. He would downplay that part of it. But yeah, I agree about the Book of Enoch, that it wasn't meant to be biblical canon, because the Bible gives us enough eschatology. It kind of wraps it up with the Apostle John, the stuff that he said in the Book of Revelation. But I feel like that's necessary, even though it's, you know, because it wraps up the whole narrative. It wraps up, we get a picture of Judgment Day. We get a picture of the rest of history, like the snapshot of the rest of the history with 1,000 years. And so we get to see the fulfillment of the promise in Scripture. It's not just left hanging. And so we get to see the promise to Abraham fulfilled in those whose sins are forgiven, and they are not cast into the lake of fire because their names were written in the book of life of the Lamb slain before the foundation of the world. But yeah, alright, remember to like the video, guys, if you are still here, and we'll see you in the next one. I'm getting tired. I don't know if you can hear that or not. I'm starting to feel tired. I gotta get up and work tomorrow. Back to work, guys. Alright, have a good one.